This is not about bashing Indians or any other country for that matter. This is about understanding why Westerners thrive without astrology and what that says about us. And no, this is not some kind of scientific study based on hardcore data. This is purely an observation and my opinion. Feel free to agree or disagree in the comments. I've spent most of my life in India and a good amount of time in the US as well. And one thing that has been very obvious to me is the difference between how much astrology impacts people's lives in India versus in the US and other Western countries. In India, people constantly talk about their sun sign and moon sign and rising sign and all kinds of signs. And every day they read their horoscope in the newspaper, watch their daily horoscope on TV, ask their friends who are astrologers about their future, and even take major life decisions based on what the stars say. If a marriageable Indian woman is struggling to find a suitable boy for her, her parents will often be told by family and friends, "Oh, your daughter's horoscope is not good, so she can't find a good boy." But if an NRI woman is struggling to find a husband, you won't hear people say that her horoscope is not good. You will, however, hear them say things like, "She's too choosy," or "She has high standards." The fact is, horoscopes are just a part of everyday life for many Indians. In contrast, when I lived in the US, I hardly heard anyone ever talking about their sun sign or moon sign or reading their horoscope. Some people would talk about it, but only in a very dismissive way, like they did it for fun, just like some people read their tarot cards or get their palms read. Most people there live their lives without giving any importance to what the stars say. So the obvious question is, why don't they need astrology? And what does that say about us? Well, let me start by saying that I have nothing against astrology. I believe in it. And I'm not saying that everyone in India is obsessed with it. There are plenty of educated, logical, rational people who do not believe in astrology. But there is a huge section of our population that does. And let's focus on them for this discussion. Now, since we're talking about this huge section of our society, let's keep this discussion restricted to our traditional Vedic astrology, which is different from Western astrology. So what is Vedic astrology? Well, it's an ancient system of divination that originated in India more than 5,000 years ago. It's based on the idea that the positions of the stars and planets at the time of your birth can have a profound impact on your personality and your future. Now, in Vedic astrology, there are 12 signs, just like in Western astrology. However, unlike Western astrology where the sun is considered the most important planet, in Vedic astrology, the moon is considered the most important planet. That's because Vedic astrology is primarily a lunar-based system, while Western astrology is a solar-based system. Now, you may think that these are just two different ways of looking at the same thing, and that's true. But the fact is, these two systems have very different foundations. For example, in Vedic astrology, the moon represents the mind, and the mind is considered to be the most important thing. That's because in Vedic astrology, the ultimate goal is to achieve enlightenment. And enlightenment is something that happens in your mind. So in order to achieve enlightenment, you have to first understand your mind. And the position of the moon at the time of your birth can tell you a lot about your mind. On the other hand, in Western astrology, the sun represents the most important thing, because in Western astrology, the ultimate goal is to achieve happiness. And happiness is something that comes from within you. So in order to achieve happiness, you have to first understand yourself. And the position of the sun at the time of your birth can tell you a lot about yourself. To summarize, in Vedic astrology, the emphasis is on the moon and the mind, while in Western astrology, the emphasis is on the sun and the self. So if you look at it from this perspective, it makes sense why Westerners don't need astrology. Unlike Vedic astrology, Western astrology is not about understanding yourself or your mind. It's more about predicting your future and telling you what's going to happen to you. And Westerners are perfectly okay with that. They consult an astrologer when they want to know what's going to happen to them. They don't consult an astrologer to help them understand themselves better. And if you look at it from this perspective, it also makes sense why Indians are so obsessed with astrology. Unlike Westerners, most Indians use astrology as a tool to understand themselves better. And that's because spirituality is deeply ingrained in our culture. We're a very spiritual people. Our ancient scriptures talk a lot about the soul and its journey. And the ultimate goal of every Indian is to achieve enlightenment. So unlike Westerners, for whom happiness is the ultimate goal, for Indians, enlightenment is the ultimate goal. And in order to achieve enlightenment, you have to understand your mind really well. And Vedic astrology is one of the tools that we use to understand our mind better. Another reason why Indians are obsessed with astrology is because we're a very fatalistic people. We believe that everything is predetermined by fate. And this fatalism is deeply ingrained in our culture. Our ancient scriptures talk a lot about dharma, which is basically your duty or your path. And we believe that everyone has a dharma. And once you know your dharma, you have to follow it no matter what. And Vedic astrology helps us figure out our dharma. It tells us what our strengths and weaknesses are, and what we should be doing with our lives. So it's not surprising that so many Indians take major life decisions based on their horoscope. We believe that our horoscope can tell us what our strengths and weaknesses are, and what we should be doing with our lives. But the truth is, Westerners don't need astrology because they don't have to deal with these problems. Westerners are not very spiritual, and they're not very fatalistic either. Their goal in life is to be happy and successful, and they believe that they have free will. They can make their own decisions and they can change their own destiny. And that's why Westerners are fine with living without astrology. They don't need it to understand themselves or their fate. On the other hand, Indians are a very emotional people. Emotions drive our decisions, and emotions drive our actions. And Vedic astrology helps us understand our emotions better. It tells us what our strengths and weaknesses are, and what we should be doing with our lives. So it's not surprising that so many Indians take major life decisions based on their horoscope. We believe that our horoscope can tell us what our strengths and weaknesses are, and what we should be doing with our lives. But the truth is, Westerners don't need astrology because they don't have to deal with these problems. Westerners are not very emotional. Their goal in life is to be happy and successful, and they believe that they have free will. They can make their own decisions, and they can change their own destiny. And that's why Westerners are fine with living without astrology. They don't need it to understand themselves or their fate. While Westerners can afford to ignore astrology, Indians cannot. It's not in our nature. Our ancient scriptures teach us that we must understand our mind and our fate. And astrology is one of the tools that we use to do that. That's why astrology is so popular in India even today. It helps us understand ourselves better, and it helps us figure out our strengths and weaknesses and what our path in life should be. On the other hand, Western astrology is all about predicting the future and telling you what's going to happen to you. And Westerners are perfectly okay with that. They consult an astrologer when they want to know what's going to happen to them. They don't consult an astrologer to help them understand themselves better. Of course, this is just my opinion, and there is no right or wrong way to practice astrology. Everyone is free to believe in whatever they want to believe in. But I think it's important to understand the difference between Vedic astrology and Western astrology, and what each one says about the people who practice it. So what do you think? Does this make sense to you? Do you agree with what I've said here? Let me know in the comments below, and if you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.